Welcome back to my YouTube channel, CoinNexa Vault. What you are about to see in this video is going to completely rewire the way you think about the small, silver-colored dimes that pass through your hands every single day, because the 4 Roosevelt dimes we are covering today are not just rare, they are the kind of coins that have made grown collectors stop mid-sentence, set everything down, and stare in disbelief, and I am telling you right now with total certainty that this video builds, coin by coin, to a final reveal so extraordinary that the people who watch all the way to the end are going to walk away from this video and never look at their pocket change the same way again. So stay with me, because every single coin on this list is more remarkable than the one before it, and the last one is in a league entirely its own. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1997 P. Roosevelt dime is one of the most perfect examples of that truth that the entire world of American numismatics has ever produced. Because this is a coin that rolled off the presses at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997, a year that most people remember for nothing more coin-related than reaching into their pocket to pay for a soda, and yet certain surviving examples of this dime have climbed to values that make serious collectors lean forward in their chairs and start doing math they never expected to do over a 10-cent piece. The 1997 P. Roosevelt dime, and I want you to hear that P. mintmark, Philadelphia, no mintmark on the dime itself because Philadelphia dimes of this era bear no mark, which is itself a detail that trips up newer collectors, is a coin with a production story that is far more complicated and far more interesting than its modest face value would ever suggest. To understand why this coin matters, you have to go back to Philadelphia in 1997 and understand what was happening inside that mint, because 1997 was a year of high-volume production pressure, the kind of year where the mint was pushing millions upon millions of dimes through its presses to meet the relentless demand of everyday American commerce, and when you operate at that scale, when the machinery runs around the clock and the quality control teams are stretched across a facility producing billions of coins annually, the conditions are exactly right for something extraordinary to slip through, and with the 1997 P, something did. Collectors and researchers in the Roosevelt dime series have documented examples of the 1997 P that display a dramatic double die obverse, where the coin's design elements, the date, the word liberty, and the fine portrait details of Franklin Roosevelt's profile, show two distinct, offset impressions that are clearly visible under magnification and, on the strongest known examples, even detectable with a careful naked eye and a good light source. This kind of double die error occurs during the die-making process itself, when the hub used to impress the design into the working die shifts slightly between impressions, locking a doubled image permanently into the die, so that every coin struck from that die carries the error, meaning this is not a one-off accident but a repeating anomaly that produced multiple affected coins, some of which entered circulation and were spent without anyone ever realizing what they were holding, and some of which were preserved by attentive collectors who noticed the doubling and understood immediately that they were looking at something that did not belong in the ordinary stream of commerce. The finest certified examples of the 1997 P. Roosevelt dime with strong, confirmed double die characteristics have commanded prices at collector levels that are genuinely remarkable for a modern dime. We are talking about coins graded by PCGS or NGC at the top of the mint state scale, MS67 full bands and above, where the value climbs in ways that would make the average person who spent one of these on a candy bar feel a very specific kind of regret. Full bands, and if you are new to Roosevelt dimes, this term is everything, refers to the horizontal bands on the torch that appears on the reverse of the coin, and achieving a full bands designation means those bands are fully separated, fully struck, with no weakness or blending, which requires a perfect planchet, a perfectly prepared die, and a perfectly timed strike, all happening simultaneously. And when you combine full bands with the top mint state grades and a confirmed double die error, the resulting coin is so rare that locating one in that condition is less like shopping and more like a treasure hunt with genuinely life-changing stakes at the end. Imagine the collector, and this is a scene that plays out in real life more often than people realize, who picks up a roll of dimes from a bank, not with any particular expectation, just out of habit and curiosity, and sits down that evening under a desk lamp with a loupe, working through each coin methodically, and then stops. holds the coin closer, tilts it, and sees, clearly and unmistakably, the doubled impression on the date and the lettering, and understands in that moment that this 10-cent piece is worth more than any single item currently in their home. That is the reality of the 1997 P. Roosevelt dime. The Philadelphia Mint's legacy is long and storied, stretching back to the very founding of American coinage, and the 1997 P is a reminder that even in the modern era, even in a year as recent and as ordinary feeling as 1997, that mint was still capable of producing coins that would become the obsession of serious numismatists for decades. The historical context matters too. 1997 sits in that interesting numismatic space where coins are recent enough to feel modern but old enough that the populations of high-grade survivors have been thinned by 2.5 decades of time, handling, and the simple entropy of coins living in the world, which means that every year that passes, the truly pristine examples become rarer relative to the growing collector base that wants them, and the premium for the finest known specimens climbs. Accordingly, now, the honest truth that every serious collector will tell you, and I am going to tell you this here because it is important, is that the value of your specific 1997 P dime depends entirely on its condition, its grade, and whether it has been authenticated and certified by a recognized grading service like PCGS or NGC, because a circulated example, worn smooth by years in someone's pocket, carries a very different conversation than a gem mint state coin with full bands and a confirmed error. Designation, and the gap between those two conversations can be the difference between face value and a number that makes your hands shake a little. So before you assume, before you spend, before you toss that 1997 P into the change dish by the door, look at it. And if you thought the 1997 P was enough to make your heart beat a little faster, I need you to stay right where you are, because the next coin on this list is going to make this one feel like the opening act of something much, much bigger. Next, the 1996 D. Roosevelt dime, and if you think you already know what a 1996 dime looks like, I want you to hold that thought, because the D mint mark on this coin, that small letter stamped below the torch on the reverse signifying production at the Denver Mint, is the beginning of a story that separates this particular dime from the millions of its identical-looking cousins that people spent in 1996 without a second thought, and the collectors who have chased the finest surviving examples of the 1996 D know that this is a coin with a personality entirely its own, one that rewards the patient, the observant, and the genuinely curious with a level of numismatic excitement that is completely disproportionate to its face value. Denver in 1996 was a mint operating in full production mode, a facility with a proud history of precision and output that stretched back through decades of American coinage, and the 1996 D. Roosevelt dime was produced in substantial numbers. But substantial numbers in the context of everyday circulation does not mean that exceptional surviving examples are easy to find, because the population of truly gem-quality 1996 D dimes, coins that have never been touched, never been cleaned, never been dropped into a pile with other coins and rattled around until their surfaces are a map of microscopic contact marks, that population is far smaller than the raw mintage figures would suggest, and it is within that small, elite population of survivors that the real story of the 1996 D begins. Numismatic researchers and dedicated Roosevelt dime specialists have documented in the 1996 D a fascinating phenomenon related to die quality and strike consistency, because Denver in this particular production run was working with dies at various stages of their useful life. Some fresh and sharp and capable of delivering a strike so crisp that every detail of Roosevelt's portrait and every band on the reverse torch is rendered in perfect, breathtaking clarity, and others that were further along in their lifespan, showing the kind of subtle fatigue that translates on the finished coin as softness in the high relief areas and a failure to fully develop the horizontal bands on the torch that make the difference between a standard grade and a full bands designation. The coins struck from the freshest, sharpest dies in the 1996 D run are the ones that matter most to collectors, The ones where the strike is so complete and the surfaces so clean and original that they achieve the top mint state grades with full bands and enter a category of rarity that is genuinely difficult to quantify because the certified populations at those levels are so small that adding or removing a single coin from the population report changes the landscape of what is known to exist. And within that already select group, collectors have also identified examples of the 1996 D that display a repunched mintmark, a condition where the D mintmark was impressed into the die more than once, slightly offset between impressions, so that the finished coin shows a doubling or ghosting of the D that is clearly visible under magnification and adds a layer of collectability that pushes the value of an already premium coin into even higher territory. The repunched mintmark on the 1996 D is not a dramatic, obvious error visible across the room. It is the kind of detail that reveals itself to the collector who takes the time to look, who approaches their coins with the quiet, focused attention that separates a casual hobbyist from a serious numismatist. And the reward for that attention is discovering that a coin pulled from an ordinary roll or found in an old collection is carrying a feature that most people who ever handled it never saw. There is something deeply compelling about that dynamic, the idea that an error, a variation, a moment of mechanical imperfection at the Denver Mint in 1996 has been riding around in someone's coin jar for nearly 30 years, completely unnoticed, waiting for exactly the right person to find it and hold it up to the light and see what has been there all along. The auction behavior for the finest 1996 D Roosevelt dimes reflects a collector community that understands this coin's place in the Roosevelt dime series, a series that, despite being one of the most widely produced and most widely circulated coin types in American history, contains within it a remarkable number of date and mintmark combinations that are genuinely scarce in high grades, genuinely exciting when they surface in pristine condition, and genuinely capable of delivering prices that make non-collectors blink and look at the number again. And as with every coin we cover today, the critical point, the point I want you to carry with you, is that the value of any specific 1996 D dime you might be holding right now is entirely a function of its condition, its grade, and its certification status, because the gap between a worn example and a gem full bands example certified by a top-tier grading service is not a small gap. It is a gap that can represent the difference between a coin worth its face value and a coin worth a conversation that changes your afternoon. So look at your 1996 D dimes with fresh eyes, and then stay right here, because what is coming next in this video is something that makes the 1996 D feel like a warm-up, a coin from a decade and a half earlier with a story so layered and so dramatically compelling that it has become one of the most talked about dimes in the Roosevelt series among collectors who really know this denomination inside and out. Next, the 1981 D Roosevelt dime, and I need you to really hear me on this one, because we are now stepping into a coin from 1981, a year that carries real historical weight, a year when America was at a genuine cultural and economic crossroads, and the Denver Mint was producing coins in a climate that was as turbulent and fascinating as any in the late 20th century. And it is in that context, that specific, historically charged moment in American life, that certain surviving examples of the 1981 D Roosevelt dime have become the kind of coins that serious collectors describe not just as valuable but as important, as pieces of a specific moment in time that were preserved against all odds and now represent something far larger than 10 cents. The 1981 D Roosevelt dime enters the collector conversation with a particular kind of gravity because 1981 was a year of genuine economic anxiety in the United States. Inflation had been a punishing reality for American families through the late 1970s and into the early 1980s, interest rates were at historic highs, and the Mint was navigating its own pressures of production volume and resource management in a way that created exactly the kind of operational conditions where errors and variations are most likely to occur and most likely to slip through quality control undetected. And the 1981D has rewarded the collector community's attention with a set of documented variations and conditions that make it one of the more compelling date and mint combinations in the entire Roosevelt dime series. Numismatic researchers examining certified populations of the 1981D have consistently noted that this coin presents a specific challenge when it comes to striking quality. The Denver Mint in 1981 was working through a production period where achieving consistent, complete strikes across the entire design was more difficult than in some other years, which means that the population of 1981D Roosevelt dimes that actually achieved full bands, that critical designation indicating complete separated horizontal bands on the reverse torch, is significantly smaller than the raw mintage numbers would lead anyone to expect. When a coin series has high mintage but low surviving high-grade populations, the dynamic that creates is one of the most exciting in all of collecting, because the coin does not look rare, it looks common, it looks like every other 1981 dime, it looks like something you might find in a parking meter or a vending machine, but the truly exceptional examples, the ones at the summit of the grading scale with the full bands designation confirmed and the surfaces original and untouched, are genuinely scarce in a way that population reports from PCGS and NGC make absolutely clear when you look at the numbers. Beyond the striking quality story, the 1981D has attracted attention from error coin specialists who have documented examples with a dramatic die clash, a condition that occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving impressions of each die's design on the opposing die, so that subsequent coins struck from those clashed dies carry ghost images of design elements from the wrong side of the coin, creating a visual anomaly that is immediately striking to anyone who knows what they are looking at and utterly invisible to anyone who does not. A die clash on a Roosevelt dime is not the most common error in the series, and on the 1981D, in high mint state condition with original surfaces and a strong clash visible under magnification, the combination of factors that would have to align to produce such a coin is extraordinary enough to push the value of certified examples into territory that would genuinely surprise anyone who has only ever thought of this coin as something you get in change at a drive-through window. The storytelling potential of this coin is rich precisely because 1981 feels both recent and distant at the same time, recent enough that the coins look familiar, recent enough that people have them in old jars and desk drawers and forgotten change purses, and distant enough that 40-plus years of time have separated the pristine from the worn, the exceptional from the ordinary, in ways that are now locked in and will never change. And there is a particular kind of excitement that comes from knowing that a coin this old, this historically situated, this numismatically interesting, could still be sitting unexamined in a collection somewhere, not yet certified, not yet understood, waiting for exactly the right moment and the right person. As always, and because this is what separates genuine numismatic education from hype, the value of your specific 1981D Roosevelt dime is entirely dependent on its individual condition, its grade as assessed by a professional, and whether it carries any of the documented varieties and errors that elevate it above the standard example, because without that context, every dime looks the same, and with it, the right example becomes something truly extraordinary. But extraordinary as the 1981D is, and it absolutely is, nothing I have told you today has prepared you for what the final coin on this list represents, because the 1973D Roosevelt dime that is coming up next is the reason serious collectors keep lists, keep buying rolls, keep searching through jars and old collections. And it is the coin that is going to leave you staring at every dime you ever touch for the rest of your life in a way you absolutely were not doing before you started watching this video. Next, the 1973D Roosevelt dime, and I want you to understand, before I even begin to build the case for this coin, that what we are about to get into is the grand finale of today's video, the coin that every other coin we have covered has been building toward, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what the Roosevelt dime series can produce in terms of collector excitement, numismatic significance, and the kind of value that makes people who find one in exceptional condition Describe the moment as genuinely life-changing, and I am going to take you through every layer of this coin's story because it deserves every word, every second, and every bit of your attention that you have generously given this video all the way to this point. The 1973 D. Roosevelt dime. Denver Mint. 1973, a year that sits at a fascinating and historically rich crossroads in American life, a year when the country was navigating the end of the Vietnam War, the beginning of what would become one of the most dramatic political crises in American history, and an economic environment that was just beginning to feel the tremors of the energy crisis and inflationary pressures that would define the decade. And against all of that turbulent, historically charged backdrop, the Denver Mint was producing coins, millions of coins, dimes that would flow through the American economy and land in pockets and jars and parking meters and piggy banks across the country, and somewhere within that production, something happened that the numismatic world has been talking about ever since collectors began to seriously study and document the Roosevelt dime series in fine detail. The 1973 D. Roosevelt dime occupies a specific and important position in the certified population data that grading services like PCGS and NGC maintain, and what those population reports reveal is a story of genuine, documented scarcity at the highest grade levels that is not a matter of opinion or collector enthusiasm but cold, hard numerical fact. The number of 1973 D. Roosevelt dimes that have been certified at the top of the mint state scale with full bands is so small that every single example is known by name in serious collector circles, every appearance at auction is a documented event, and every sale price is studied and discussed because the community of people who understand what these coins represent is passionate, knowledgeable, and financially committed to the pursuit of owning the finest known examples. The striking characteristics of the 1973 D are at the heart of why this coin is so scarce in top condition, because the Denver Mint in 1973 was dealing with die preparation and planchet quality issues that made achieving a truly complete, fully struck coin, one where every detail of Roosevelt's portrait is sharp and defined and every band on the reverse torch is fully separated and fully rendered, significantly more difficult than in many other years, which means that the coins from 1973 that did achieve that level of completeness represent a genuine minority of the production run, a minority that was further thinned by the normal attrition of circulation, cleaning, and mishandling that affects every coin that moves through the world over the course of 50-plus years. But the rarity story of the 1973 D does not stop at striking quality and population scarcity, because this coin has also become associated in serious numismatic literature with one of the most remarkable and most documented error varieties in the entire Roosevelt dime series, a variety that error coin specialists have examined, cataloged, and pursued with the kind of focused, almost obsessive dedication that only appears when a coin truly deserves it. Certain examples of the 1973 D have been documented with a dramatic transitional planchet error, a condition in which the coin was struck on a planchet that was not the standard clad composition intended for dime production but instead a planchet that carried different metal characteristics, producing a coin with a weight, a color, and a surface quality that is detectably, measurably, and verifiably different from a standard 1973 D dime, a coin that survived somehow, against all the odds of the quality control systems that should have caught it, against the randomness of sorting and shipping and distribution, and made its way into the world, where it lived for years or decades before a collector with the knowledge to recognize what they were holding encountered it and understood that they were in the presence of something that the mint never intended to exist. The emotional resonance of a coin like this is enormous. The idea that a mistake made inside a mint in Denver, Colorado, in 1973, a purely mechanical accident in a facility producing millions of coins, could survive for half a century and ultimately prove to be one of the most valuable small coins in modern American numismatics is the kind of story that gets passed down through the coin collecting community like a piece of genuine folklore, told at coin shows and in online forums and in the quiet moments when two collectors who really know this series sit down and talk about what keeps them in the hobby after all these years. The auction history of the finest certified 1973 Roosevelt dimes, the ones at the absolute summit of the mint state scale, full bands, original surfaces, authenticated by the top grading services, and carrying confirmed variety designations, reads like a chronicle of the Roosevelt dime series at its most dramatic, with prices that reflect not just the scarcity of these coins but the depth of collector demand, the passion of the community that has studied and pursued them, and the simple economic reality that when genuinely great coins appear in the market, the people who understand what they represent will pay what they are worth. Now I am going to give you the honest truth about your specific coin, the same truth I have given you for every coin today, because this is what separates real numismatic education from sensationalism. The value of the 1973 Roosevelt dime in your possession, right now, depends entirely on its individual condition, its professional grade as assessed by PCGS or NGC, whether it has been authenticated and whether it carries any of the documented varieties that make the finest known examples so extraordinary. Because a circulated 1973 dime that has spent 50 years living in the world is a piece of history worth keeping but not a financial revelation, while a gem mint state example with full bands and a confirmed variety designation is something else entirely, something that belongs in a protective holder, something that belongs in front of an expert, something that belongs in a conversation about what American coinage can produce at its most accidental and its most magnificent. The 1973 Roosevelt dime is the coin that ends this video on exactly the note it deserves, a reminder that the dimes in your spare change are not just money, they are artifacts of specific moments in American history, produced by human hands and human machines in human conditions that were imperfect in all the ways that human things are imperfect, and that within the population of coins that resulted from that imperfection, there are examples so rare, so beautifully preserved, so numismatically significant that they stand as proof that the greatest treasures in coin collecting are sometimes the ones hiding in the most ordinary places. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of today's video. If this changed the way you are going to look at your dimes going forward, hit that like button right now, subscribe to CoinNexa Vault so you never miss a discovery like this one, and drop a comment below telling me which coin today surprised you the most, because this community is built on exactly that kind of conversation, and I will see you in the next video.